On our anniversary, my boyfriend showed up hours late with his friends. When he said, "It's just dinner, stop being dramatic," I smiled and revealed what I'd been planning for months. His face went white. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 28 years old, and until that moment at Marcello's, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. Real betrayal isn't just about broken promises. It's about watching someone you love disrespect you so casually that it becomes clear they never valued you at all. The reservation was for 7 o'clock. I'd called 2 weeks in advance because Marcello's doesn't just take walk-ins, especially not on a Friday night. I wore the emerald dress Marcus said made my eyes look like forest after rain. His words from our second date 3 years ago. I'd spent an hour on my makeup, making sure everything was perfect. Our third anniversary deserved to be special. By 7:15, I was alone at a table for 2, watching the waiter's sympathetic glances as he refilled my water for the 3rd time. Other couples around me were laughing, toasting, celebrating. I felt like I was on display. The girl stood up on her anniversary. My phone buzzed at 7:30. "Running late, babe. Got caught up with the guys. Be there soon." No apology. No explanation of how soon translated into actual minutes. Just a casual text like he was running to grab milk from the store. I ordered a glass of wine, then another. The waiter, bless his heart, brought me complimentary bread with this look that said he'd seen this scene play out before. I smiled and thanked him, pretending my heart wasn't slowly cracking with each passing minute. 8 o'clock came and went. The couple next to me finished their meal and left, replaced by a new couple who ordered, ate their appetizers, and were halfway through their entrees before my phone finally buzzed again. Almost there. Traffic is crazy. It was 8:45. Marcus lived 20 minutes away from the restaurant. Even with traffic, there was no universe where this delay made sense. But I didn't text back. I just sat there, my second glass of wine untouched, watching the door. At 9:15, the door finally opened, but Marcus didn't walk in alone. Behind him were Tyler, Jake, and Connor, his college buddies who treated every social gathering like an extension of their fraternity days. They were laughing about something, their voices loud enough to turn heads across the restaurant. Marcus spotted me and waved like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just shown up 2 hours and 15 minutes late to our anniversary dinner with 3 uninvited guests. The audacity of that wave, so casual and carefree, did something to me. It crystallized every small disrespect. Every time he'd chosen his friends over me, every "you're being dramatic" whenever I tried to express how his actions made me feel. They approached the table, and I could smell beer on them. They'd been at a bar. While I sat here alone on our anniversary, Marcus had been drinking with his friends. "Hey babe," Marcus leaned down to kiss my cheek, but I turned my head slightly so his lips caught mostly air. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane." And then we ran into the guys and they said they were starving, so I figured why not make it a group thing? More people, more fun, right? Tyler pulled out a chair without asking. "Sarah, looking fancy tonight. This place is pretty uptight though, huh?" They gave us looks when we walked in. "Probably because you're loud and drunk," I thought, but didn't say. Connor was already signaling the waiter. "Can we get some menus over here? And a round of beers?" Jake sat down and immediately started scrolling through his phone, not even acknowledging my presence. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw someone I barely recognized. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a stain on his collar that looked suspiciously like wing sauce. This was the man who'd shown up for our anniversary. "Marcus," I said quietly, my voice somehow steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone?" He glanced at his friends, who were already debating whether to order appetizers or go straight to entrees, then back at me with this exaggerated sigh. "Come on, Sarah, it's just dinner. Stop being dramatic. The guys are hungry and we're all here now. Isn't that what matters? Just dinner." Our third anniversary was just dinner. Something inside me clicked into place. I'd been planning to wait until after dinner, maybe even until we got home, but Marcus had just given me the perfect opening. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, placing it face down on the table between us. "You're right," I said, my smile widening in a way that made Marcus's eyes narrow slightly. "It is just dinner, and since the guys are so hungry, I'm sure they'll appreciate what I'm about to share." I picked up my phone and unlocked it, navigating to the folder I'd titled Anniversary Gift. 3 months of work, 3 months of private investigator fees, 3 months of documenting everything I needed to know about Marcus's real activities. "Actually," I said, standing up and raising my voice just enough to cut through the restaurant's ambient noise, "before we order, there's something everyone should see. Marcus, remember last month when you said you were working late on that big project?" His face, which had been flushed from alcohol and laughter, started to drain of color. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "I'm sharing, honey. You always said I should be more open with your friends." I turned my phone toward Tyler first, showing him the first photo. This was taken at the Hilton downtown on October 15th. That's Marcus in the photo, and that's his colleague, Jennifer, in his arms. Tyler's mouth dropped open. Jake finally looked up from his phone. Connor's beer froze halfway to his lips. "But wait," I continued, swiping to the next photo. "There's more. October 23rd, same hotel. November 2nd, this time at her apartment. November 10th, November 17th, November 24th. I swiped through each photo, watching Marcus's face turn from red to white to a sickly gray color. "Sarah," Marcus whispered, reaching for my phone, but I stepped back. "Don't worry, I have backups. Multiple backups, actually. Cloud storage is wonderful." I looked around the table at his friends, who were staring at Marcus with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. "Did you guys know he's been sleeping with Jennifer for 4 months? Because I didn't. Not until I noticed he was working late every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. Strange how predictable betrayal can be once you know what to look for." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Even the kitchen noise seemed to have dimmed. Everyone was watching our table. "You're insane," Marcus hissed, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is manipulation. You can't what? Tell the truth? I tilted my head, still smiling that cold smile I'd practiced in my mirror at home. But I'm just getting started. See, what you don't know, Marcus, is that Jennifer isn't the first. Remember Stephanie from your office softball team, spring of last year? His eyes widened. He hadn't known I knew about Stephanie. And before her, there was that bartender. What was her name? Oh yes, Nicole. Remember her? From that dive bar you claimed was your thinking spot? I watched him process that I knew about all of them. Every single one. Should I continue? Tyler pushed back from the table. Dude, what the hell? Marcus ignored him, his attention fixed on me with something between panic and rage. You had me followed? You hired someone to spy on me? I hired someone to confirm what I already suspected. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. The difference between you and me, Marcus, is that I actually gathered evidence before making accusations. I didn't just show up drunk with my friends to ruin something important. This is our anniversary, he shouted, loud enough to make nearby diners lynch. You're supposed to be celebrating with me, not pulling this crazy stunt. Oh, I'm celebrating. I reached into my purse again and pulled out a small envelope. This is for you. Go ahead, open it. Marcus stared at the envelope like it might explode. Jake reached over and grabbed it, tearing it open before Marcus could protest. He pulled out the single piece of paper inside and his eyebrows shot up. Is this real? Jake asked, looking between the paper and Marcus. Very real, I confirmed. That's an eviction notice. The apartment we've been living in for 2 years, the one you thought was split 50-50, turns out the lease is solely in my name. I called the landlord last week and gave notice that my boyfriend would need to vacate within 30 days. He's already approved it. Connor whistled low. Damn. There's more, I said cheerfully, as if I were sharing good news. Remember that joint savings account we opened last year? The one for our future together? I withdrew my half this morning. All $17,000 of it. Don't worry, I left your $7,000 in there. You'll need it for first month's rent and deposit on a new place. Marcus's hands were shaking. You can't do this. Actually, I can. I spoke with a lawyer to make absolutely sure. Since we're not married and the lease is in my name, you have no legal right to stay in the apartment, and since it was a joint account, I had every right to withdraw my contribution. I looked at his friends. Oh, and guys, I'd be careful about trusting anything Marcus tells you. He's been lying to everyone for months. Tyler stood up abruptly. I'm out. This is way too much drama for me. Yeah, I'm gonna go too, Jake said, already backing away from the table. Marcus, man, you need to get your life together. Connor was the last to leave, pausing just long enough to shake his head at Marcus. That's really messed up, dude. Really messed up. And then they were gone, leaving Marcus standing alone at our table while the entire restaurant watched. The waiter appeared nervously, unsure whether to bring menus or call security. I sat back down and gestured to Marcus's empty chair. Please, sit. After all, it's just dinner, right? And we're both here now. Isn't that what matters? His face contorted with rage and humiliation. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret, I said quietly, my smile finally fading, is not doing this sooner. I regret wasting 3 years on someone who treated me like I was disposable. I regret every time I forgave you for being late, for canceling plans, for choosing your friends over me. I regret believing you when you said I was being dramatic for having feelings. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the chair. We're not done. You think you can just destroy my life like this? I didn't destroy your life, Marcus. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. I raised my wine glass. Happy anniversary. He stormed out without another word, shoving past a couple trying to enter the restaurant. The door slammed behind him hard enough to make the windows rattle. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, someone started clapping. A woman at the table behind me, probably in her 50s, was applauding with tears in her eyes. Others joined in, scattered applause throughout the restaurant that made my cheeks flush with embarrassment and vindication in equal measure. The waiter appeared at my side. Ma'am, that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in this restaurant. Your meal tonight is on the house. I smiled at him, a real smile this time. Thank you, but I'll pay. I have 17,000 reasons to celebrate. But what Marcus didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that the eviction notice and the bank withdrawal were just the beginning. I had months of evidence documenting not just his infidelity, but something much bigger, something that would affect more than just our relationship. And I was about to make sure everyone who needed to know found out exactly who Marcus really was. I woke up the next morning in my apartment, our apartment, Marcus's absence already evident in the eerie silence. No sounds of him shuffling around in the kitchen. No smell of burnt toast from his terrible attempts at breakfast. No random socks left on the bathroom floor. Just peace. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Marcus, progressing from angry demands to bargaining to pathetic pleading. I deleted them without reading past the first few words. Tyler and Jake had both texted, surprisingly, to say they'd had no idea Marcus was cheating and that what I'd done took guts. Connor sent a simple, "You deserve better." But the most interesting message came from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer from Marcus's office. We need to talk. Today. Coffee at 10, the place on 5th Street. I stared at the message for a full minute. Jennifer, the woman Marcus had been sleeping with for 4 months, captured in multiple photographs by the private investigator I'd hired, the woman who thought she was having a secret affair with an available man. I texted back, "I'll be there." At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked into Common Grounds, a hipster coffee shop with exposed brick walls and baristas who took their craft way too seriously. Jennifer was already there, sitting at a corner table, nervously shredding a napkin. She was younger than I'd expected from the photos, maybe 24 or 25, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and glasses that were probably more fashion than function. She stood when she saw me, her face pale. "Sarah, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I said honestly, sitting across from her. "But curiosity won. I need you to know something first." Jennifer's hands were shaking as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. I didn't know about you. Not at first. Marcus told me he was single, that he'd just gotten out of a long relationship and was focusing on work and himself. Of course he did. I ordered a black coffee from the waiter who appeared, then turned back to Jennifer. When did you find out? 2 weeks ago. I saw a photo on his phone, you and him at some park. And when I asked who you were, he said it was his ex, but the photo was dated from last month. Her voice cracked slightly. I confronted him, and he admitted you two were still together. He said it was complicated, that you were having problems, that he was planning to end it, but hadn't found the right time. The classic lines, I took a sip of my coffee when it arrived. Let me guess. He said I was controlling, dramatic, that I didn't understand him. Jennifer nodded miserably. All of that. And I believed him because I wanted to. Because I'd already fallen for him by then. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I need you to hear it. What I did was wrong, even if I didn't know the whole truth. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but all I saw was genuine remorse. You weren't the first, I said quietly, and you wouldn't have been the last. Her eyes widened. What? There was Stephanie before you, a bartender named Nicole before her, and probably others I don't know about. I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the investigators' reports. Marcus has a pattern. He finds women who are younger, less experienced, easier to manipulate with his lies. He tells them what they want to hear until he gets bored or gets caught. Then he moves on to the next one. Jennifer covered her mouth with her hand. Oh my God. I thought I was special. I thought we had something real. That's what he does. He makes you feel special while simultaneously making his actual girlfriend feel like she's crazy for suspecting anything. I locked my phone and put it away. But that's not why you asked to meet me, is it? You didn't just want to apologize. She took a deep breath. No, I wanted to warn you and to give you something. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it across the table. Marcus has been doing something at work. Something illegal, I think. I didn't realize what it was at first, but after I found out about you and started really looking at his behavior, I noticed things. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of emails, financial documents, and what looked like internal company memos. What am I looking at? Marcus has been falsifying expense reports. Not small amounts, Sarah. We're talking thousands of dollars every month. He submits receipts for business dinners that never happened, conferences he didn't attend, equipment purchases that don't exist. He's been doing it for at least a year, maybe longer. My mind raced as I flipped through the documents. Why are you giving this to me? Because someone needs to stop him. Jennifer's voice hardened with resolve. He's been bragging to me about how easy it is, how the company's accounting system is so outdated that nobody catches it. He said he'd made enough to put a down payment on a house. Meanwhile, he's been charging romantic dinners with me to the company card and calling them client meetings. I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. Have you told anyone else about this? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first because I wasn't sure what to do. If I report it to HR, I'll have to admit I was having an affair with him, and I could lose my job too. But if I don't report it, he just keeps stealing. Forward everything to me, I said immediately. Email addresses, dates, amounts, all of it. I'll handle it. Jennifer nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Something Marcus should have considered before he decided betrayal was an acceptable way to live his life. I stood up, leaving money on the table for my untouched coffee. Thank you for reaching out, Jennifer. What you did with Marcus was wrong, but what you're doing now takes courage. She looked up at me with something like hope in her eyes. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I considered the question honestly. I don't know, but I don't hate you. You were manipulated too. Marcus is really good at making people believe his lies. As I walked out of the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Jennifer had already sent everything. I had financial documents, email chains, receipt copies, and even recorded conversations where Marcus casually discussed his fraud. But I wasn't going straight to his company with this information. No, that would be too simple, too quick. Marcus had humiliated me publicly, had disrespected our relationship in the most casual way possible, had brought his drunk friends to our anniversary dinner like I was an afterthought. He deserved to experience the same slow-building dread I'd felt over months of suspecting his infidelity. He deserved to watch his life crumble piece by piece while wondering what would happen next. I made a call to the private investigator I'd been working with. Daniel, it's Sarah. I have more work for you. I need everything on Marcus Sullivan's financials, bank accounts, credit cards, investments, debts, all of it, and I need it within 48 hours. That's tight timing, Daniel said, but I could hear him already typing. Must be urgent. Extremely. Bill me whatever you need to. My next call was to my best friend, Rachel, who worked in corporate law. Hey, hypothetical question for you. If someone discovered their employer was committing expense fraud, what would be the proper channels to report it? Is this about Marcus? Rachel asked immediately. She'd been the first person I'd confided in about his cheating, and she'd been the one who recommended Daniel in the first place. Maybe. Sarah. Her tone shifted to serious. What did you find? I told her everything Jennifer had given me. Rachel was quiet for a long moment after I finished. This is serious, she finally said. We're talking potential criminal charges, not just termination. If you're going to do this, you need to be absolutely certain of what you're accusing him of. I have documents, emails, even recorded conversations. Then you need to go to the company's legal department, not HR. HR might try to handle it internally to avoid scandal. Legal will have to investigate properly, especially if there's evidence this has been going on for over a year. She paused. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you pull this trigger, there's no taking it back, I'm sure. My voice was steady, certain. Marcus made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. That afternoon, I sat in my apartment organizing everything into a comprehensive file. Financial documents in one section, infidelity evidence in another, the eviction notice notice in a third. I was building a complete picture of Marcus's deception, and the image was damning. My phone rang. Marcus's mother, Patricia. I'd been expecting her call. "Sarah," she said without preamble, her voice cold. "I just got off the phone with Marcus. He told me what you did at the restaurant last night, humiliating him in front of his friends, making wild accusations, threatening him with eviction. I'm frankly appalled at your behavior." "Did he tell you why I did those things?" I asked calmly. "He said you've been paranoid and controlling for months, that you hired someone to follow him around like some kind of stalker." "That's not normal, Sarah. That's obsessive." "Did he mention the 4 different women he's been sleeping with over the past year and a half?" I heard her sharp intake of breath. "No, let me guess. He left that part out." "That's a serious accusation." "It's a documented fact. I pulled up the photos on my laptop. I'm emailing you some pictures right now. Take a look and then tell me who's behaving inappropriately." I heard her computer chime with the incoming email. The silence stretched for almost a full minute. "These could be doctored," she finally said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "They're not. I have the original files from the investigator with timestamps and locations. I also have testimony from the women involved. Credit card statements showing charges at hotels on nights Marcus told me he was working late, and phone records proving calls and texts to numbers he never mentioned." I let that sink in. "Your son isn't the victim here, Patricia. He's the perpetrator." Another long silence. "Why didn't you come to me with this sooner?" "Because every time I tried to talk about problems in our relationship, you defended him. Every time he canceled plans or showed up late or chose his friends over me, you told me that's just how men are, that I needed to be more understanding." The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "I stopped confiding in you because you made it clear whose side you were on. I'm his mother. What did you expect? I expected you to care about the truth more than protecting your son from consequences he deserves." I closed my laptop. "Marcus is about to face some very serious problems, Patricia. Not because I'm being vindictive, but because he made choices that hurt people. Multiple people. And those choices are finally catching up with him." "What does that mean?" Her voice sharpened with alarm. "What are you planning?" "Nothing I'm planning. Just things I'm revealing." I ended the call before she could respond. Within an hour, Marcus started blowing up my phone again. His mother had clearly told him about our conversation and the photos. His messages went from angry to desperate to threatening in rapid succession. "You can't do this to me. I'll sue you for defamation. Those photos prove nothing. Please, Sarah, we need to talk about this. I'm coming over. We're going to work this out." I changed the locks on the apartment that afternoon. When Marcus showed up at 6 o'clock, his key didn't work. He pounded on the door for 10 minutes before I finally opened it with the chain still engaged. "You changed the locks?" His face was red with anger and exertion. "You can't just change the locks." "I can when it's my apartment." I held up the lease agreement with only my name on it. "You have until the end of the month to collect your belongings. After that, anything remaining becomes property of the landlord." "Sarah, please, can we just talk?" His voice cracked. "I know I messed up, okay? I admit it, but we can work through this. 3 years together has to mean something." It did mean something. That's why this hurts so much. I looked at him through the gap in the door, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a distant sadness for the time I'd wasted. "But you killed whatever we had when you decided your gratification was more important than my trust. I'll change. I swear I'll change. No more cheating, no more lying. I'll be the boyfriend you deserve." He was begging now, tears actually forming in his eyes. "Just give me another chance. Marcus, I gave you chances. Every time I suspected something and you convinced me I was being paranoid, that was a chance. Every time you apologized for being late or canceling plans, that was a chance. Every single day I chose to trust you despite my gut telling me something was wrong, that was a chance. I started to close the door. You used up all your chances. Now you get to see what life looks like when someone stops giving them to you." "Wait." He shoved his foot in the door before I could close it fully. "You don't understand. I need this apartment. I don't have anywhere else to go. You should have thought about that before you ruined our anniversary." I pushed harder on the door. "Move your foot, Marcus. Not until you listen to me. You think you're so smart, so righteous, but you're making a huge mistake. Huge. You don't know everything about me, Sarah. There are things, situations, that are more complicated than you realize. I know about the expense fraud." His face went chalk white. "What? The falsified reports? The fake conferences? The business dinners that never happened? I know about all of it." I smiled at his expression of absolute terror. "Did you really think nobody would ever notice? Or did you just not care because getting caught seemed impossible? Who told you?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Does it matter? What matters is that I have documentation. Lots of documentation. Emails, receipts, recorded conversations. Everything someone would need to build a very compelling case." Marcus's hand fell away from the door. He backed up a step, his expression cycling through shock, fear, and calculation. "You wouldn't. If I go down for that, it would ruin my career. I'd never work in the industry again." "Probably not," I agreed. "But that's not my problem anymore. That's a consequence of your choices. Just like losing this apartment is a consequence. Just like losing your friend's respect is a consequence. You built this house of cards, Marcus. I'm just the wind that knocked it down." "Sarah, please." He was fully crying now. "Please don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll do anything you want. Just don't report me." "What I want," I said quietly, "is for you to experience just a fraction of the humiliation and betrayal you made me feel. What I want is for you to understand that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too clever to get caught." I stepped back and started closing the door. "You have until the end of the month. Don't make me call the police to remove you." I shut the door before he could respond, engaging all 3 locks and the security chain. I could hear him on the other side, still talking, but I'd stopped listening. His words didn't matter anymore. They were just noise. noise, meaningless sounds from someone who'd lost the right to my attention. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel, the private investigator. Got the financial records you requested. You're going to want to see this? Can you meet tomorrow morning? I texted back confirmation, then poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was realizing his world was crumbling, his relationship destroyed, his home gone, his mother knowing the truth about his infidelity, and now the knowledge that I held evidence of his workplace fraud. But I wasn't done yet, not even close, because what Marcus still didn't know, what nobody knew, was that his expense fraud wasn't the worst thing I'd discovered. The financial records Daniel was about to show me would reveal something much bigger, something that connected Marcus to people and activities that would shock everyone who thought they knew him. And when I was ready, when I'd gathered every piece of evidence and built an unassailable case, I was going to make sure the right people knew everything. Marcus thought last night's public humiliation was revenge. He had no idea what revenge actually looked like. Daniel's office was in a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without a second glance. Perfect for a private investigator who valued discretion. When I arrived at 8 the next morning, he already had coffee waiting and multiple folders spread across his desk. Sarah. He gestured to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming early. Once you see what I found, you'll understand why I wanted to meet face to face. I sat down, accepting the coffee he offered. That bad? Worse than bad. It's complex. Daniel opened the first folder, revealing bank statements highlighted in yellow. Marcus has 3 bank accounts. One joint account with you, which you already knew about, but 2 others that are solely in his name. One with Regional Bank, one with Coastal Credit Union. 2 secret accounts? I leaned forward, studying the numbers. Why would he need 2? Because he's compartmentalizing his activities. Daniel pulled out more papers. The Regional Bank account is where his paycheck gets deposited. Standard stuff, nothing unusual. But look at these transfers. He pointed to a series of transactions, each several $1,000s, moving from Regional to Coastal on a monthly basis. Every month, like clockwork, he moves significant amounts to the Coastal account. Sometimes $3,000, sometimes $5,000, occasionally as much as $8,000. The fraud money, I said quietly. Exactly. He's smart enough not to leave the stolen funds in his main account where they might raise questions during audits or tax season. He moves it to the secondary account, which has a different address on file. One in New Jersey, not here in the city. I felt a chill run down my spine. An address in New Jersey? Daniel nodded grimly. A rental property? Month-to-month lease, paid from the Coastal account. Studio apartment in Newark. He slid another document across the desk. Want to guess who else has keys to that apartment? The document was a rental agreement with 2 names listed as authorized occupants, Marcus Sullivan and Stephanie Chen. Stephanie, I whispered, the office softball woman. They're still seeing each other, Sarah. The affair never ended. He just got better at hiding it. Daniel's expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. I stared at Stephanie's name, processing this new layer of betrayal. Marcus hadn't just cheated. He'd set up an entire second life, complete with a secret apartment and financial infrastructure to support his deception. The expense fraud wasn't opportunistic stealing. It was systematic funding for his alternate existence. There's more, Daniel said carefully. The Coastal account shows regular charges at restaurants, hotels, entertainment venues, all in New Jersey and nearby areas. But here's what's interesting. He pulled out credit card statements. Marcus also has 2 credit cards I don't think you knew about. One is maxed out at $15,000. The other is at $12,000. And look at what the charges are for. I scanned the statements. Designer clothes, jewelry stores, expensive dinners, spa treatments, premium gym memberships. He's living way beyond his means. Far beyond. Between the apartment rent, the credit card debt, and the lifestyle spending, Marcus is hemorrhaging money. The fraud isn't just about greed, Sarah. It's about necessity. He's dug himself into a financial hole so deep that he needs that stolen money just to maintain his double life. My mind raced through the implications. What happens when the company discovers the fraud? He'll be fired immediately. They'll probably pursue criminal charges given the amounts involved. Grand larceny, potentially. He could face prison time. Daniel leaned back in his chair. And here's the kicker. All that debt, it's in his name only. You're not liable for any of it. But the moment he loses his job and can't make payments, the credit card companies will come after him hard. He'll probably have to declare bankruptcy. Good, I said flatly. The word surprised me with its venom, but I didn't take it back. Marcus had built this elaborate structure of lies and theft. He could watch it collapse on him. There's something else you should know. Daniel's tone shifted, becoming more serious. In the course of tracking Marcus's financial activities, I noticed some unusual patterns. Large cash withdrawals from the Coastal account, always in round numbers, always on the same day each month, usually around $2,000. Cash withdrawals? For what? I don't know yet. Cash is impossible to trace, which is probably why he uses it. But someone who's already committing fraud and maintaining a secret apartment making regular large cash withdrawals? Daniel raised his eyebrows. That's concerning. Could be gambling debts, could be payments to someone, could be something else entirely. I wanted to flag it for you. I thought about Marcus's panicked face when I'd mentioned the fraud, the way he'd said there were situations more complicated than I realized. Can you find out what the cash is for? I can try, but it'll take time and more resources. Surveillance, possibly, to see where he goes on withdrawal days. Daniel paused. The question is, do you want to keep digging? You already have enough to destroy him professionally and legally. How much further do you want to go? I looked at all the documents spread across Daniel's desk, the evidence of Marcus's systematic betrayal and criminality. Part of me wanted to stop, to take what I had and be done with it. But a larger part, the part that had sat alone at that restaurant table for over 2 hours on our anniversary, needed to know everything. Keep digging, I said. I want to know what the cash is for. I want the complete picture. Understood. Daniel gathered the documents back into their folders. I'll have more for you in a few days. In the meantime, what are you planning to do with what you already know? I'm going to talk to a lawyer, I said. A real lawyer this time, not just my friend Rachel. I want to make sure that when I report Marcus's fraud, I'm protected legally. I don't want any blowback on me for knowing about it and not reporting it sooner. Smart move. Daniel handed me a business card. Use this guy, Alan Reeves. Tell him I referred you. He specializes in employment law and corporate fraud cases. He'll know exactly how to handle this. I took the card and stood up. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. You're paying me well enough, he said with a slight smile. But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Guys like Marcus, they don't stop until someone forces them to face consequences. That afternoon, I met with Alan Reeves in his downtown office. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I walked him through everything: the infidelity, the fraud, the secret apartment, the mounting debt, and the mysterious cash withdrawals. Alan listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he sat back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. First, let me assure you that you're not legally liable for Marcus's activities, he said. The fraud was committed entirely in his professional capacity, and you had no knowledge of it until recently. Even if someone tried to argue you should have known, which they won't, you have documentation showing when you discovered it and acted appropriately. Relief flooded through me. So I can report it without worrying about being implicated? Absolutely. In fact, I'd recommend you report it sooner rather than later. The longer you wait, the more someone could question why you delayed. Alan pulled out a legal pad and started writing. I'll draft a formal complaint for you to submit to Marcus's company legal department. It'll include all the evidence you've gathered, presented in a way that makes clear the timeline of your discovery and your intentions. What will happen to him? He'll be terminated immediately once the company investigates and confirms the fraud. They'll likely report him to law enforcement, and depending on the amounts involved, he could face felony charges. With the evidence you have, conviction is almost certain. Alan looked at me directly. I need to ask, are you prepared for the fallout from this? Marcus will know you're the one who reported him. There could be retaliation, harassment, attempts to damage your reputation. I've already changed the locks and documented everything, I said. I have friends who know what's happening, support systems in place. I'm not afraid of Marcus anymore. Good. Fear is what allows men like him to keep hurting people. Alan continued writing. I'll have this complaint ready by tomorrow. Once you submit it, expect the investigation to take about 2 weeks. The company will want to be thorough before taking action. I left Alan's office feeling lighter than I had in months. The pieces were falling into place, the evidence was documented, the legal protection was secured. Marcus's house of cards was about to collapse completely, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. That evening, my phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered anyway. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? My name is Diane Carter. I'm calling about Marcus Sullivan. I understand you two were in a relationship? Her tone was careful, neutral. Warning bells went off in my head. Who are you? I'm a fraud investigator with Marcus's company. His name came up in a routine audit, and we're looking into some discrepancies in his expense reports. Your name appeared in several contexts, and I was hoping you might be willing to answer some questions. My heart pounded. They were already investigating. What kind of questions? Were you aware that Marcus submitted expense reports claiming business dinners at several high-end restaurants over the past year? Papers rustled in the background. Specifically, he claimed dinners at Marcello's on multiple occasions, citing meetings with clients or potential business partners. Marcello's, where we'd had our anniversary dinner, where Marcus had shown up 2 hours late with his drunk friends. I know Marcello's, I said carefully. Marcus and I went there for our anniversary just 2 nights ago. Did he mention business dinners there, or claim to have taken clients there for work purposes? No. The only time I know of him being at Marcello's was our anniversary, which was definitely not a business dinner. I paused. Why? How many times did he claim to have business dinners there? Diane was quiet for a moment. 8 times in the past 6 months. Each expense report submitted receipts for dinners ranging from $300 to $600, all supposedly with different clients or partners. 8 times. Marcus had fraudulently claimed 8 business dinners at the restaurant where we'd celebrated our anniversary. The rage that flared in me was hot and immediate. Those weren't business dinners, I said, my voice tight. I have evidence proving Marcus has been systematically falsifying expense reports for over a year. I was actually planning to file a formal complaint with your company's legal department. You have evidence? Diane's professional tone sharpened with interest. Extensive evidence. Documents, emails, recordings, witness testimony. I hired a private investigator who documented everything. I made a split-second decision. I can send it all to you today if it would help your investigation. That would be extremely helpful. Can you email me what you have? I'll need to talk to my lawyer first. Make sure I'm protected legally. But yes, I can get it to you within 24 hours. I gave her Alan's name and contact information. He's representing me in this matter. He can coordinate the evidence transfer and ensure everything is handled properly. After we hung up, I immediately called Alan. The company is already investigating Marcus. They contacted me about the expense reports. That's actually good news, Alan said. It means they're taking it seriously. I'll reach out to this Diane Carter and arrange a formal evidence submission. Sarah, this is moving faster than I expected. Are you ready for that? I thought about Marcus's smug face when he'd shown up late to our anniversary. The casual cruelty of, it's just dinner, stop being dramatic, the years of lies and manipulation and disrespect. I'm ready, I said. Let's end this. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Alan coordinated with Diane Carter, submitting a comprehensive evidence package that included Daniel's financial investigation, Jennifer's documents, and my own timeline timeline of discoveries. I signed affidavits, provided recorded statements, and answered questions with careful precision. On the third day after Diane's initial call, Marcus's mother phoned me again. "Sarah, what have you done?" Patricia's voice shook with emotion. "Marcus just called me from his office. They're escorting him out of the building. They fired him. They're saying he stole from the company, that he's going to be arrested. This is your fault." "This is Marcus's fault," I corrected calmly. "He's the one who committed fraud. I just made sure the right people knew about it." "You vindictive little witch! You're ruining his life over a few mistakes, over some silly relationship drama." She was crying now, her composure completely shattered. "He's my son. How could you do this to him?" "Patricia, your son stole over $70,000 from his employer over the course of 18 months. He maintained a secret apartment where he carried on affairs with multiple women. He ran up $30,000 in debt financing a double life. These aren't mistakes, they're choices. Deliberate, calculated, criminal choices." My voice remained steady despite my racing heart. And when he faced the consequences of those choices, instead of taking responsibility, he blamed everyone else. He blamed me for being paranoid. He blamed his circumstances for being complicated. But the truth is simple. Marcus is a thief and a liar, and he finally got caught. He's going to jail because of you. He's going to jail because he committed crimes. I didn't make him steal money. I didn't make him cheat. I didn't make him set up secret accounts and rental apartments. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own actions. I took a breath. "I'm sorry you're hurting, Patricia. I know you love your son. But love doesn't mean enabling his destruction. Sometimes it means letting him face what he's done." She hung up on me, but I wasn't upset. I'd said what needed to be said. That evening, Rachel came over with wine and takeout. We sat on my couch, the city lights twinkling beyond the window, and she raised her glass in a toast. "To Sarah Mitchell," she said, "who proved that revenge isn't a dish best served cold. It's a dish best served with comprehensive documentation and legal coordination." I laughed despite myself, clinking my glass against hers. "Is it revenge if it's just letting someone experience the natural consequences of their behavior?" "Oh, honey," Rachel said with a grin, "it's absolutely revenge, but it's also justice. Sometimes they're the same thing." My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "Got something on those cash withdrawals. You're going to want to sit down for this. Can we meet tomorrow?" I showed the message to Rachel, who raised her eyebrows. "More secrets?" "Apparently." I texted Daniel back to confirm a meeting time. Rachel leaned back against the couch. "How are you feeling?" "Really feeling, under all the legal strategy and investigation management." I considered the question honestly. "Lighter. Like I've been carrying this weight for so long that I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. Marcus tried to make me feel crazy for suspecting him, dramatic for having feelings, unreasonable for expecting basic respect. But I wasn't any of those things. I was just a woman who deserved better and finally decided to demand it." "You did more than demand it," Rachel said softly. "You built a case, gathered evidence, secured legal protection, and systematically dismantled his entire fraudulent existence. That's not just demanding better. That's executing a masterclass in consequences. He brought it on himself." "He absolutely did." She refilled our wine glasses. "What happens next?" "I meet with Daniel tomorrow to find out what those cash withdrawals were for. After that," I shrugged, "I move forward. Maybe I'll finally take that vacation I've been putting off. Maybe I'll redecorate this apartment so it doesn't remind me of Marcus everywhere I look. Maybe I'll just exist for a while without managing anyone's crises or covering for anyone's mistakes." "That sounds perfect." Rachel raised her glass again. "To existing without managing crises. To existing without managing crises," I echoed. But even as we toasted to moving forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that the cash withdrawal revelation was going to change everything again. Marcus's world was already destroyed. His career ended, his relationships shattered, his criminal prosecution pending. What could possibly be worse than what had already been revealed? I'd find out tomorrow, and something told me that when I did, the full scope of Marcus's betrayal would finally become clear. The anniversary dinner, the fraud, the secret apartment, all of it was just the surface. Underneath lay something darker, something that would make everything else seem almost trivial by comparison. Marcus had built his life on lies and manipulation. I was about to discover just how deep those lies went and how many other people had been damaged along the way. Daniel's expression when I walked into his office the next morning told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be good news. "Coffee?" he offered, but his hand was already shaking slightly as he poured. "Just tell me," I said, sitting down. "Whatever it is, I can handle it." He pulled out a thick folder, much larger than the previous ones, and opened it to reveal surveillance photos. The images showed Marcus at various locations: a pharmacy, a medical clinic, what looked like a lawyer's office, and repeatedly at the same small house in a residential neighborhood about 30 miles outside the city. "The cash withdrawals," Daniel began, his voice careful and measured. "I tracked Marcus on withdrawal days. He follows the same pattern every time. Gets cash from an ATM near his office, drives to this address in Westfield." He tapped one of the photos showing the house. "He stays for about an hour, then leaves. Who lives there?" My throat felt tight. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out more photos. These showed a woman, probably in her early 30s, with light brown hair standing on the porch of the house. In some photos, she was alone. In others, she was with a small child, a little boy who looked about 4 years old. My breath caught. "Is that—" "Her name is Amy Pearson," Daniel said quietly. "She's 32, works part-time as a dental hygienist, and has lived in that house for 5 years. The boy's name is Owen. He's 4 years old and starts kindergarten next fall." He paused. "Sarah, Owen is Marcus's son." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of Daniel's desk, trying to process what he'd just said. "Marcus has a child?" According to public records, Marcus is listed as the father on Owen's birth certificate. Amy and Marcus were never married, but they were in a relationship relationship when Owen was born. Daniel pulled out more documents. The cash withdrawals, their child support payments, $2,000 a month every month for the past 4 years. Child support, I repeated numbly. He's been paying child support this entire time. Yes. And based on phone records I was able to access, he's been in regular contact with Amy. They text frequently, share photos of Owen, coordinate visitation schedules. Daniel's expression was grim. Sarah, this isn't just a secret child from a past relationship. Marcus has been actively co-parenting this boy while simultaneously living with you and maintaining that apartment with Stephanie. My mind raced through the implications. Every business trip Marcus had taken, every weekend he'd claimed to need space or time with his friends, every unexplained absence. How many of those had been visits to see his son? How many times had he come home to me directly from playing father to a child I never knew existed? Does Amy know about me? I asked. I spoke with her yesterday. Daniel's voice was gentle. She knows about you now. She was shocked. Marcus told her that you two had broken up months ago, that he was living with roommates temporarily while looking for his own place. Of course he did. The laugh that escaped me sounded bitter even to my own ears. Let me guess. He told her he wanted to be more involved in Owen's life, but needed time to get his finances in order first. Daniel nodded. Something very similar. He's been promising her for over a year that he'd move closer to Westfield, that they could try to make things work as a family. She's been waiting for him, turning down other relationships because she believed Marcus was serious about committing to her and Owen. I looked at the photos of Amy and Owen. She seemed nice in the pictures, smiling at her son, her expression open and genuine. Owen looked happy, a little boy with Marcus's eyes and Amy's smile, completely unaware that his father was a fraud who'd been lying to everyone in his life. How did they meet? I asked. At a charity event 5 years ago, before Marcus met you. They dated for about 8 months. Amy got pregnant, and according to her, Marcus initially seemed excited about becoming a father, but as the pregnancy progressed, he pulled away. By the time Owen was born, Marcus was already involved with someone else. Daniel paused. That someone else was you, Sarah. Marcus started dating you 2 months before Owen was born. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. Our entire relationship had been built on a foundation of Marcus abandoning his pregnant girlfriend. I'd been the other woman without even knowing it, the excuse he'd used to walk away from his responsibilities. Did he ever tell you he wanted children? Daniel asked. No, I said slowly, memories surfacing. Whenever I brought it up, he'd say he wasn't ready, that we should focus on our careers first, that there was plenty of time. I looked at the photo of Owen again. He was saying that while he already had a son. Amy said Marcus was very clear with her that he couldn't be a full-time father, that his career ambitions required flexibility and focus, but he promised to provide financial support and maintain a relationship with Owen. Daniel closed the folder. The cash payments were his way of keeping everything off the books, untraceable. If he'd done official child support through the courts, you might have found out. His company might have found out. Everyone would have known. How much does Owen know about his father? According to Amy, Owen knows Marcus as daddy, but he's been told that daddy works far away and can only visit sometimes. Marcus usually sees him twice a month, sometimes more if he can manage it. He's present enough to be a figure in Owen's life, but absent enough that the boy doesn't question why he doesn't live with them. I stood up and walked to Daniel's window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere in all those buildings and streets, Marcus was dealing with the fallout of his fired job and pending criminal charges. But he had no idea that I now knew about his son, about Amy, about the 4 years of systematic lying that went even deeper than I'd imagined. Does Amy know about the fraud? I asked. Not yet. I thought you should decide how to handle that information. I turned back to face Daniel. She needs to know. If Marcus is facing criminal charges and potential jail time, that affects Owen. She needs to know what she's dealing with so she can prepare. I can arrange a meeting between you two if you'd like, Daniel offered. Amy said she'd be willing to talk to you. Set it up. My voice was firm despite the emotional chaos inside me. I want to meet her and Owen. 2 days later, I drove out to Westfield, following GPS directions to a neighborhood of modest single-family homes with well-kept lawns and children's toys scattered across porches. Amy's house was painted a cheerful yellow with white trim, a small garden blooming in the front yard. She answered the door before I could knock, having clearly been watching for my arrival. Up close, I could see the worry lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. Sarah, she said, her voice soft. Thank you for coming. Please, come in. The house was cozy and clearly child-focused. Toys organized in colorful bins, children's artwork on the refrigerator, a small table in the corner covered with crayons and coloring books. Through a doorway, I could see Owen in the living room, absorbed in a cartoon on television. He doesn't know you're coming, Amy said, following my gaze. I thought we should talk first. We sat at her kitchen table, awkward silence stretching between us until Amy finally spoke. I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea Marcus was still with you. He told me you'd broken up, that he was single and trying to figure out his next steps. If I'd known, I never would have, her voice broke. I never would have let him keep coming around, giving Owen hope that we might be a family. It's not your fault, I said, meaning it. Marcus lied to both of us, to everyone, apparently. Your investigator told me about the fraud charges, about the other women. Amy's hands twisted together on the table. I've been such a fool. I thought the cash payments were because he wanted to help me avoid tax complications. He made it sound like he was being generous, going above what he needed to do legally. He's good at making lies sound like favors, I said. Trust me, I know. What's going to happen to him? Amy looked at me with genuine fear. If he goes to prison, Owen will have to know eventually. How do I explain that to a 4-year-old? His father isn't just absent, he's in jail? I don't know, I admitted, but I think you need to stop protecting Marcus from the consequences of his choices. Owen deserves better than a father who only shows up when it's convenient, who lies to his mother, who funds his double life through that. I know you're right. Amy wiped at her eyes. But he's still Owen's father, and Owen loves him. Every time Marcus comes to visit, Owen lights up. He talks about him for days afterward. How do I take that away from him? Before I could answer, a small voice came from the doorway. Mommy, who's that? Owen stood there, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his curious eyes fixed on me. He had Marcus's dark hair and strong jawline, but Amy's gentle expression and kind eyes. He was beautiful, innocent, completely unaware of the complicated adult world swirling around him. This is Miss Sarah, Amy said, her voice carefully cheerful. She's a friend of Daddy's. Is Daddy coming today? Owen's face lit up with hope that broke my heart. Not today, sweetie, but soon. Amy glanced at me, a silent apology in her eyes for the lie. Why don't you go finish your show? We'll have snacks in a few minutes. Owen nodded and scampered back to the living room. The sound of his cartoon filled the brief silence. He asks about Marcus every day, Amy said quietly. I've been telling him Daddy is working hard so he can visit more often. Another lie to add to the pile. What do you want to happen? I asked. If you could choose the outcome of all this, what would it be? Amy was quiet for a long moment. I want Owen to have a father who's present and honest. I want to not be afraid every month that the money won't come, that Marcus will disappear completely. I want to stop waiting for a future that was never going to happen. She looked at me directly. I want what you're doing, taking control and demanding better. But I have Owen to think about. Every choice I make affects him. Then make choices that show him people face consequences for their actions, I said. Make choices that teach him honesty matters, that manipulation isn't love, that promises mean something. I softened my tone. You're not protecting Owen by protecting Marcus. You're just teaching him that bad behavior can be excused if you love someone enough. Amy's tears fell freely now. I've been so stupid. I saw the red flags, the inconsistency, the vague explanations, the way he always had an excuse for why he couldn't commit fully. But I wanted to believe him because Owen needed a father. Owen needs a good father, I corrected. Marcus hasn't been that. He's been a visitor, a part-time participant in his son's life who couldn't even be honest about the fact that he had a son. I leaned forward. Amy, I'm going to ask you something difficult. Will you testify about the cash payments if it comes to that? Will you be willing to show a pattern of Marcus's deception and financial manipulation? She paled. Testify? Like in court? Maybe. I don't know what the prosecutor will need, but your testimony could be important. It shows Marcus has been systematically hiding income and assets, lying to multiple people, building complex structures to avoid accountability. I paused. I know it's asking a lot, but if Marcus faces real consequences, maybe he'll finally stop hurting people. Amy looked toward the living room where Owen was laughing at something on television, the sound pure and joyful. Will it help Owen in the long run? I think it will. I think Owen deserves to grow up knowing the truth, even if it's painful. And I think you deserve to move forward without Marcus's shadow over everything. I pulled out my lawyer's card. Talk to Alan. He can advise you on your rights, on how to protect yourself and Owen legally. You don't have to face this alone. She took the card, clutching it like a lifeline. Thank you for coming here, for being kind when you didn't have to be. Marcus doesn't deserve either of us. No, I agreed, he doesn't. As I drove back to the city, my phone rang. Marcus's number. I'd unblocked him temporarily, curious about what he might say now that his world had completely collapsed. I answered without greeting. Sarah. His voice was ragged, desperate. We need to talk. Please, just give me 5 minutes. What could you possibly have to say to me, Marcus? I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but you don't understand the whole situation. There are things, complications you don't know about. Like your son? I said quietly. The silence on the line was absolute. I could almost hear him processing, calculating, trying to figure out how I'd found out. How did you? He started. Does it matter? I know about Owen. I know about Amy. I know you've been playing father in Westfield while living with me and sleeping with Stephanie and God knows who else. I know everything, Marcus. Every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal. Owen he's not part of this. Marcus's voice cracked. Whatever you're planning, whatever revenge you're executing, leave him out of it. He's innocent. You're right. He is innocent, which is exactly why he deserves better than you. I merged onto the highway, my hands steady on the wheel. I met Amy today. I met your son. Do you know what I saw? A woman who's been waiting for years for you to become the man you promised to be. A little boy who lights up at the mention of his daddy, who has no idea his father is a fraud facing criminal charges. Don't you dare judge me for what? For abandoning your child? For lying to his mother about your relationship status? For paying her in untraceable cash so nobody would find out you had responsibilities? My voice hardened. You're pathetic, Marcus. You wanted all the benefits of multiple lives without any of the accountability. Well, guess what? The bill came due. You destroyed everything, he shouted. My job, my reputation, my future. All because of your vindictive need for revenge. You couldn't just break up with me like a normal person. You had to annihilate everything I built. I didn't build your house of lies, Marcus. I just knocked it down. I took the exit toward my apartment. And for the record, I didn't destroy everything. You still have one chance at redemption. What chance? Suspicion colored his tone. Be a real father to Owen, not a part-time visitor, not a cash dispenser, a real father. Show up consistently. Be honest with him. Give Amy the respect she deserves instead of stringing her along with false promises. I pulled into my parking garage. You took everything else from yourself, your career, your relationships, your freedom, but you still have a son who loves you. Don't take that for granted. Since when do you care about Owen? Since I met him and realized he's another victim of your manipulation. He deserves better than what you've been giving him. I turned off my car. This is the last time we're going to speak, Marcus. Your lawyer will coordinate with mine regarding any remaining property issues. Beyond that, we're done. Completely done. Sarah, wait. I hung up and blocked his number again, this time permanently. permanently. In my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Amy was probably putting Owen to bed, reading him a story, kissing his forehead, and wondering what the future held. Somewhere else, Marcus was sitting in whatever temporary accommodation he'd found, realizing that the walls were finally closing in completely. My phone buzzed with a message from Alan. Prosecutor wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're moving forward with charges. This is really happening. I texted back confirmation, then opened my laptop. There was one more thing I needed to do. I composed an email to Amy, attaching a list of family lawyers who specialized in child support cases, resources for single mothers, and information about counseling services for children dealing with parental absence. I included a personal note. You and Owen aren't alone. There are people and resources that can help you build a stable future, with or without Marcus. You're stronger than you know. After hitting send, I closed my laptop and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything I'd discovered. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me, he'd betrayed Amy, Owen, his employer, his friends, everyone who'd ever trusted him. The scope of his deception was staggering, but what was even more staggering was how close he'd come to getting away with it. If I hadn't insisted on that anniversary dinner at Marcello's, if he'd just shown up on time and treated me with basic respect, I might never have decided to look deeper. I might never have hired Daniel, never have discovered the fraud, never have learned about Owen. One careless moment of disrespect had unraveled everything, and tomorrow I would meet with the prosecutor and provide the final pieces of evidence needed to ensure Marcus faced every consequence his actions deserved. The revenge I planned at that restaurant table was complete, but somehow it felt less like victory and more like exhausted relief that the truth had finally come to light. Marcus's games were over, and I was finally, truly free. The prosecutor's office was in a government building downtown, all fluorescent lighting and worn linoleum floors that spoke of years of budget cuts and overworked staff. Assistant District Attorney Maria Rodriguez met me in a small conference room, her expression professional but warm. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for coming in, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. I've reviewed the evidence package your attorney submitted, and I have to say, it's one of the most comprehensive cases I've seen in years. You did excellent work documenting everything. I had help, I said, thinking of Daniel and Alan, and motivation, the best kind. Maria opened a thick file folder. Let me walk you through where we are with the case against Marcus Sullivan. Based on the financial evidence, witness statements, and company records, we're pursuing multiple charges. Grand larceny in the second degree for the expense fraud, which in this state carries a potential sentence of 5 to 15 years. We're also looking at forgery charges for the falsified documents and receipts. 15 years, I repeated, the number feeling both enormous and somehow insufficient. It's unlikely he'd get the maximum, especially as a first-time offender, Maria continued. But given the amount stolen, over $70,000, and the systematic nature of the fraud, we're confident we can secure a conviction with significant prison time. Probably 4 to 7 years if he doesn't take a plea deal. What kind of plea deal? We'd likely offer 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months, plus restitution to the company and probation after release. She looked at me directly. I need to ask, are you prepared to testify if this goes to trial? Defense attorneys can be brutal with witnesses, especially romantic partners. They'll try to paint you as vindictive, claim you're exaggerating or lying out of spite. Let them try, I said firmly. I have documentation for everything. Phone records, financial statements, photographs, witness testimony from people who have no stake in this. My feelings about Marcus's betrayal are irrelevant to the facts of his crimes. Maria smiled slightly. Good answer. Now, I also wanted to talk about the child support situation. She pulled out another file. Amy Pearson has agreed to cooperate with our investigation. The cash payments Marcus made establish a pattern of hiding assets and income. That strengthens our case considerably. How is Amy handling all this? As well as can be expected, she's scared for her son, angry at Marcus, and feeling guilty for not seeing through his lies sooner. Maria's expression softened. She mentioned you came to visit her, that you were kind and supportive. That was generous of you, given the circumstances. Owen is innocent in all this. So is Amy, really. They're both victims of Marcus's manipulation. I paused. What happens to the child support if Marcus goes to prison? That's a civil matter, separate from the criminal case. Amy would need to file through family court to formalize support arrangements and potentially garnish any assets or income Marcus has. Given his debt and likely financial ruin, she may not see much, but at least it would be official and enforceable. I want to help her, I said suddenly. Not with money necessarily, but with resources, information about how to navigate the system, connect with support services, whatever she needs. Maria studied me for a moment. You're not what I expected, Ms. Mitchell. Most people in your position would want nothing to do with their ex's secret family. Most people's exes probably don't have secret families built on systematic fraud and lies. I met her gaze. Amy and Owen don't deserve to suffer because Marcus is a disaster. If I can help them build a stable future without him, I'm going to do it. The meeting lasted another hour as Maria walked me through what to expect during the prosecution process, possible timelines, and preparation for testimony. When we finally finished, she stood and extended her hand. One more thing, she said, unofficially, completely off the record. She smiled. What you did, building this case, protecting yourself legally, helping other victims, that took real courage. I see a lot of people who get screwed over by romantic partners. Most of them never fight back because they're too hurt or scared or conditioned to accept mistreatment. You didn't just fight back, you strategically dismantled his entire fraudulent existence. That's impressive. Thank you, I said, feeling unexpected emotion welling up. Though honestly, if he'd just just shown up on time to our anniversary dinner, I might never have looked deeper. Then I guess we should be grateful for his arrogance. Maria walked me to the door. We'll be in touch as the case progresses. Try to enjoy your freedom, Ms. Mitchell. You earned it. Leaving the prosecutor's office, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The wheels of justice were turning, slowly but inevitably. Marcus would face consequences. The truth was out. Everything I'd worked toward for months was coming to fruition. My phone rang as I reached my car. Rachel, how'd it go with the prosecutor? She asked without preamble. Good. Great, actually. They're moving forward with serious charges. I unlocked my car and slid into the driver's seat. 4 to 7 years if he doesn't take a plea. Holy shit. Rachel was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? Tired? Relieved? A little sad, maybe? I started the car but didn't put it in gear yet. Is that weird? To feel sad for someone who hurt you so badly? Not weird at all. You loved him once. That person you loved might not have ever really existed, but your feelings were real. It's okay to mourn what you thought you had while still being glad it's over. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You just usually ignore my advice until it's too late. I could hear the smile in her voice. Listen, I'm calling because I have something for you. Can you meet me at our usual place in an hour? Our usual place was a wine bar we'd been going to since college. A cozy spot with exposed brick walls and a rotating selection of small batch wines. When I arrived, Rachel was already there. 2 glasses of red wine on the table and a gift bag beside her. What's this? I asked, sitting down and eyeing the bag suspiciously. A celebration. Rachel pushed the bag toward me. Open it. Inside was a framed photograph. It took me a moment to recognize it. A picture from our college graduation. Rachel and me in our caps and gowns, arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. We looked so young, so full of hope and possibility, completely unaware of the complications adult life would bring. I found it in a box of old photos last week, Rachel said softly. I had it professionally framed because I wanted you to remember something important. That woman in the picture, she's still in there. Marcus didn't break her. He just buried her under layers of self-doubt and manipulation. But you fought your way back to her. Tears pricked at my eyes. Rachel, let me finish. She reached across the table and took my hand. I watched you dim yourself for 3 years trying to accommodate Marcus's moods and demands. I watched you apologize for having feelings, second-guess your own perceptions, accept crumbs of affection like they were grand gestures. And I hated it because I knew you were capable of so much more than what he made you believe about yourself. Now, why didn't you say something? I did. Multiple times. You weren't ready to hear it. She squeezed my hand. People can't save you from bad relationships. You have to save yourself. And you finally did, spectacularly. We clicked our wine glasses together, a toast to survival and self-reclamation. So what now? Rachel asked. You've destroyed Marcus's career, exposed his fraud, revealed his secret life, and set in motion his criminal prosecution. What's next for Sarah Mitchell? Honestly, I have no idea. I took a sip of wine, savoring the rich flavor. Maybe I'll travel, take that trip to Italy I've been postponing. Maybe I'll finally finish the novel I started writing in college. Maybe I'll just exist for a while without any grand plans or goals. All of that sounds perfect. Rachel refilled our glasses. Just promise me one thing. The next time you date someone, run them by me first. I'll do a background check. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like months. Deal. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Final report ready. Can I drop it by your place tomorrow morning? I confirmed, then turned my phone face down on the table. Whatever was in that final report could wait. Tonight was about reclaiming joy, about remembering who I was before Marcus, about celebrating the fact that I'd emerged from his manipulation stronger and clearer than I'd been in years. Rachel and I talked for hours, reminiscing about college adventures, discussing our career ambitions, planning a vacation together. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself, not Marcus's girlfriend, not the woman obsessively documenting her boyfriend's betrayals, just Sarah, flawed, resilient, free Sarah. When I finally got home that night, I walked through my apartment with fresh eyes. So many things reminded me of Marcus, furniture we'd bought together, artwork he'd chosen, the layout arranged to accommodate his preferences. I made a decision right then. Everything was getting replaced. I spent the next morning creating a Pinterest board of new design ideas, researching furniture stores, planning a complete apartment makeover. By noon, I'd scheduled donation pickup for most of the old furniture and booked consultations with an interior designer. Daniel arrived at 1 o'clock with his final report, significantly thicker than I'd expected. This is everything, he said, handing me the folder. Every investigation thread closed out, every loose end tied up, complete financial analysis of Marcus's activities over the past 5 years. 5 years? I'd only asked him to go back 3. I got curious, Daniel admitted with a slight smile. Wanted to see if the patterns extended further back? They do. Marcus has been running variations of this scam since before he met you. Smaller scale initially, but the fundamental deception was always there. I flipped through the report, page after page of documented lies and manipulation. Credit card statements from 4 years ago showing suspicious charges. Phone records proving contact with women he'd never mentioned. Financial movements that made no sense unless you understood he was funding multiple secret lives. He's been like this his entire adult life, I said, the realization settling over me. This isn't something that developed over time or that stress brought out. This is who he fundamentally is. That was my conclusion as well, Daniel said. Some people make mistakes or have periods of poor judgment. Marcus Sullivan is a serial manipulator who's been systematically deceiving everyone around him for years. You weren't his first victim, and if you hadn't stopped him, you wouldn't have been his last. After Daniel left, I sat with the report for a long time, absorbing the full scope of Marcus's deceptions. There was almost something impressive about the complexity of it all. The mental energy required to maintain so many lies simultaneously, the careful compartmentalization of different aspects of his life. But mostly, I just felt grateful. Grateful that I'd trusted my instincts when something felt off. Grateful that I'd had the resources to investigate properly. Grateful that I'd had the courage to act on what I'd discovered instead of making excuses for him or convincing myself I was overreacting. My phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered anyway. Sarah Mitchell, a man's voice, professional and unfamiliar. Yes, this is Robert Chen from Sullivan Media Group. I'm Marcus's uncle, his father's brother. He paused. I wanted to reach out to you personally to apologize for my nephew's behavior and to thank you for exposing his fraud before he could do even more damage. I was speechless for a moment. You're thanking me? Marcus's father, my brother, he's always made excuses for the boy, blamed everyone else for Marcus's problems, enabled his worst impulses. I tried to warn him years ago that Marcus showed signs of being manipulative and dishonest, but he wouldn't listen. Robert sighed deeply. I wish someone had stopped Marcus sooner. Maybe if he'd faced consequences earlier, he wouldn't have felt so invincible. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. Most of Marcus's family hasn't been very understanding about my role in all this. Most of Marcus's family are in denial about who he really is, but some of us see clearly. He paused. There's another reason I'm calling. Marcus has significant debt, about $30,000 in credit cards. His creditors are going to come after him aggressively, especially now that he's unemployed and facing criminal charges. I wanted to make sure you know you're not liable for any of it. My lawyer already confirmed that. Good. I also wanted to offer you something, if you're interested. I run a venture capital firm that invests in tech startups. Your attorney mentioned you have a background in computer science. If you're ever interested in exploring opportunities in the startup world, I'd be happy to make introductions. The offer surprised me. Why would you want to help me? Because you did what his family should have done years ago. You held him accountable. That takes integrity and courage. Robert's tone was sincere. Marcus's actions reflect on all of us. The least I can do is try to help one of his victims move forward. I thanked him and took his contact information, genuinely touched by the gesture. After we hung up, I sat staring at his business card, marveling at the unexpected kindness emerging from such a dark situation. That evening, I received an email from Amy with the subject line, "Thank you." Inside was a photo of Owen, smiling and holding up a drawing he'd made, a picture of a house with a sun and flowers. The message read, "Owen drew this today. He said it's our house and he made it happy. I think he can feel that things are changing, that maybe we don't have to keep waiting for something that was never going to happen. Thank you for giving me the courage to move forward. We're going to be okay." I saved the photo to my phone. Owen's innocent smile, a reminder of why exposing Marcus had mattered. It wasn't just about my hurt feelings or wounded pride. It was about stopping him from continuing to damage people, about protecting future victims, about ensuring Owen grew up with at least one parent who valued honesty and integrity. A week later, Maria Rodriguez called with news. Marcus took the plea deal, she said. 3 years in state prison, 18 months minimum before parole eligibility, full restitution to his former employer, and 5 years probation after release. 3 years, I repeated. It seemed both like a long time and not nearly enough. He'll be officially sentenced next month. You're not required to attend, but you have the right to make a victim impact statement if you'd like. I considered it. The thought of standing in a courtroom, facing Marcus one final time, reading a statement about how his actions had affected me. Part of me wanted that closure, wanted him to hear directly from me about the damage he'd caused. But another part of me, the part that was healing and moving forward, just wanted to be done with him completely. I'll think about it, I told Maria. That night, I sat down at my laptop and began writing. Not a victim impact statement, but something else entirely. A blog post about recognizing manipulation in relationships, about trusting your instincts when something feels wrong, about the importance of documentation and legal protection when dealing with someone who's systematically deceiving you. I didn't name Marcus or include identifying details, but I told the story honestly. The slow build of suspicion, the careful investigation, the strategic dismantling of his house of lies, the unexpected revelations along the way. I ended with this. Revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about refusing to let them continue hurting you. It's about trusting yourself enough to demand better, to walk away from what diminishes you, to build a life that reflects your actual worth rather than someone else's distorted perception of you. If you're reading this and recognizing patterns in your own relationship, listen to that voice inside you that's saying something is wrong. You're not being dramatic. You're not being paranoid. You're being perceptive. And you deserve better than someone who makes you doubt your own reality. I published the post at midnight, not expecting much response. By morning, it had gone viral. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments from people sharing their own stories of manipulation and betrayal, thanking me for putting words to experiences they'd been struggling to articulate. My inbox filled with messages, some from journalists wanting to interview me, some from women's organizations asking if I'd speak at events, some from lawyers asking if they could reference my post in cases about financial abuse and fraud. Rachel called laughing. "You broke the internet. Do you know your post is trending on 3 different platforms?" That wasn't the plan, I said, scrolling through the overwhelming response. Maybe not, but it's what people needed to hear. You took your pain and turned it into something that helps others. That's pretty amazing, Sarah. Over the following weeks, I gave several interviews, always careful to focus on patterns and behaviors rather than Marcus specifically. I talked about red flags in relationships, about the importance of maintaining financial independence, about recognizing when love is actually manipulation. The vindication wasn't in Marcus's suffering or legal consequences, though those mattered. The vindication was in discovering I wasn't alone, that countless others had experienced similar betrayals, and that by speaking honestly about my experience, I was helping people recognize and escape their own destructive situations. Marcus's sentencing date arrived. I didn't attend. Instead, I spent the day at the beach with Rachel, walking along the shore and talking about the future. When Maria texted me that the sentencing was complete, 3 years in prison as agreed, I felt nothing dramatic. No surge of satisfaction or vindication, just a quiet sense of completion. It was over. Really, truly over. That evening, I stood in my newly redecorated apartment, barely recognizable from when Marcus had lived there. New furniture in colors I loved, artwork I'd chosen, plants I was determined to keep alive, everything reflecting my taste and preferences alone. My phone buzzed with one final message from Daniel. Case closed. Final invoice attached. It's been an honor working with you, Sarah. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I paid his invoice, closed my laptop, and poured myself a glass of wine. Through my window, the city lights sparkled against the darkening sky, full of possibility and promise. Marcus was in prison. Amy and Owen were building a new life. I was free, truly free, for the first time in years. The anniversary disaster that had started everything felt like it happened to a different person, someone who didn't know her own strength yet, someone who hadn't realized she didn't need anyone's permission to demand respect and honesty. I raised my glass to that woman who'd sat alone at Marcello's, humiliated and hurt, but not yet broken. She'd fought back, and she'd won. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, I stood in the lobby of a boutique hotel in Florence, Italy. The trip I'd promised myself finally becoming reality. The marble floors gleamed under chandeliers, and through the arched windows, I could see the Duomo's magnificent dome rising against a perfect blue sky. "Your room is ready, Ms. Mitchell," the concierge said with a warm smile, "and there's a message for you at the desk." The message was from Amy. "Owen started kindergarten today. He was so brave. Wanted to show you his backpack." Attached was a photo of Owen in his classroom, beaming at the camera, his dinosaur backpack beside him at a tiny desk. I smiled and saved the photo. Amy and I had developed an unexpected friendship over the months since Marcus's arrest. She'd filed for formal child support through the courts, and while Marcus had no income currently, the court order meant his future wages would be garnished automatically. More importantly, she'd connected with a support group for single mothers and started therapy to work through the manipulation she'd endured. "He's doing so much better now that there's stability," she'd told me during our last phone call. "No more wondering if Marcus will show up. No more broken promises. Owen knows his daddy made bad choices and has to face consequences. I think that's actually healthier than the fantasy Marcus was selling us." My own healing had taken unexpected forms. The blog post had led to a book deal, a memoir about recognizing and escaping manipulative relationships. Writing it had been cathartic, forcing me to examine not just Marcus's behaviors, but my own patterns of accepting disrespect and minimizing my needs. "You taught yourself to be small," my therapist had observed during one session. "You learned that your feelings and needs were burdens rather than valid aspects of a relationship. Marcus exploited that, but the pattern existed before him." She was right. Marcus hadn't created my tendency toward self-sacrifice. He'd just recognized it and weaponized it against me. Real healing meant not just holding him accountable, but examining my own role in accepting unacceptable treatment. I'd also taken Robert Chen up on his offer to make introductions in the startup world. Through his connections, I'd met the founders of an innovative tech company, developing software to help domestic abuse survivors document evidence and connect with legal resources. They'd offered me a consulting position that allowed remote work and flexible travel. "Your experience gives you unique insight into what victims need," the CEO had told me. "You understood documentation, legal protection, strategic planning. Most people in abusive situations don't. We want to make those tools accessible." Working with them felt purposeful in a way my previous job never had. I wasn't just writing code anymore. I was building something that could genuinely help people escape situations like the one I'd survived. Rachel had visited me in Florence for a long weekend, and we'd spent 3 perfect days wandering museums, eating ridiculous amounts of pasta, and laughing until our sides hurt. On our last night, sitting at a cafe overlooking the Arno River, she'd raised her wine glass in a toast. "To Sarah Mitchell," she'd said, "who proved that revenge is a dish best served cold, calculated, and with comprehensive legal documentation." "I prefer to think of it as justice," I'd replied, clicking my glass against hers. "Justice, revenge, consequences, call it what you want. The point is, you won. And more importantly, you helped other people win too. That blog post, the speaking engagements, the work you're doing now, you took your pain and made something meaningful from it." She wasn't wrong. In the months since Marcus's sentencing, I'd spoken at 3 universities about recognizing manipulation, testified before a state legislative committee about gaps in fraud prosecution, and helped 4 different women document evidence of their partner's financial abuse. Each conversation, each testimony, each moment of helping someone else felt like reclaiming power Marcus had tried to steal from me. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Maria Rodriguez, the prosecutor, checking in as she did occasionally. "Thought you'd want to know. Marcus came up for early parole review last week. Denied. Parole board noted he showed no genuine remorse and blamed everyone else for his situation. He'll serve the full 3 years. Also, his former employer won a civil judgment against him for restitution. He'll be paying that off for decades." I felt satisfaction reading that. Not because I wanted Marcus to suffer indefinitely, but because he was finally experiencing real consequences. No more charm and manipulation to escape accountability. Just the slow, grinding reality of facing what he'd done. Jennifer, Marcus's former colleague and affair partner, had reached out to me sporadically over the months, She'd been fired when the affair came to light during the company's fraud investigation, but she'd bounced back, finding a new position at a different firm and enrolling in therapy to understand why she'd been vulnerable to Marcus's manipulation. I keep thinking about how easily I believed his lies she'd told me over coffee 2 months ago. He was so convincing, so earnest. I thought I was special to him. That's what manipulators do, I'd said. They make you feel chosen, unique, understood in ways nobody else understands you. It's intoxicating. And then they use that feeling to control you. She'd nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry for my part in hurting you. I know I said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. What he did to you, to Amy, to Owen, it's unforgivable. And I helped him do it, even if I didn't know the full story. You were manipulated too, I'd told her gently. Marcus is responsible for Marcus's choices. You made mistakes, but he created the situation that allowed those mistakes to happen. Now, standing in my Florence hotel room, I thought about forgiveness, not for Marcus, who'd shown no evidence of genuine remorse or change, but for the people like Jennifer and even Amy, who'd been caught in his web of deception. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing. It meant releasing the anger that no longer served any purpose. I opened my laptop and checked on the support forum I'd started 3 months ago, an online community for people dealing with manipulative partners or recovering from relationships with narcissists. It had grown to over 5,000 members, people sharing stories, offering advice, celebrating victories both small and large. One recent post caught my attention. A woman describing how her boyfriend had shown up 2 hours late to her birthday dinner with friends he hadn't been invited to bring, then got angry when she was upset. The parallels to my anniversary disaster were striking. I commented, "Trust your instincts. That disrespect isn't going to improve, it's going to escalate. Document everything, protect yourself financially, and don't let anyone convince you that your feelings are unreasonable. You deserve better." Within minutes, other members had chimed in with similar advice and their own stories. This was the real victory, not Marcus's prison sentence or the destruction of his fraudulent life, but the community of people supporting each other through similar experiences, refusing to accept manipulation as normal. My Italian vacation stretched into 3 weeks of solo travel, something I'd never done before. Marcus had always insisted we travel together, had dismissed my suggestions of girls' trips or solo adventures as selfish. Now, wandering through ancient ruins and sampling regional wines, I realized how much I'd sacrificed trying to accommodate someone who never intended to compromise in return. In Rome, I met a kind Australian man named James at a cooking class. We spent an enjoyable afternoon learning to make fresh pasta, laughing at our clumsy attempts to get the consistency right. When he asked if I'd like to have dinner with him that evening, I hesitated only briefly before saying yes. Over wine and carbonara at a small trattoria, James told me about his work as a wildlife photographer, his recent divorce, his 2 teenage daughters back in Sydney. He was honest about his failures in his marriage, the ways he'd prioritized work over family, the regrets he carried about not being present enough. "I'm trying to be better," he said. "Learn from my mistakes. Be the father my girls deserve, even if I wasn't always the husband my ex-wife needed." His self-awareness and accountability were refreshing after years of Marcus's blame-shifting and excuse-making. We didn't exchange numbers or make plans to see each other again. We both understood this was a pleasant moment, nothing more. But the evening reminded me that good men existed, men who took responsibility for their actions, who valued honesty, who treated women with respect. When I returned home from Italy, my apartment felt different, not just because of the new furniture and decor, but because I finally felt like it was mine. No remnants of Marcus, no memories of arguments or disappointments, just a space that reflected who I was becoming rather than who I'd been trying to be for someone else. I'd been home for 2 days when Rachel showed up with champagne and news. "Tyler got engaged," she announced, referring to one of Marcus's friends who'd been at that disastrous anniversary dinner. "And you're never going to believe who he's marrying. Tell me." Stephanie, Marcus's other affair partner, the one with the secret apartment. Rachel was grinning. Apparently, they reconnected after everything fell apart with Marcus. Tyler reached out to apologize for his part in ruining your anniversary. They started talking. One thing led to another. I laughed at the irony. Good for them. Stephanie deserves better than what Marcus gave her. Tyler apparently told her everything about that anniversary dinner, how uncomfortable he felt, how he'd realized afterward that Marcus had been using him and the other guys as props in whatever game he was playing with you. Rachel poured us both champagne. He said watching you systematically destroy Marcus's life taught him to never take his partner for granted. "I didn't destroy his life," I corrected. "I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices." "Semantics," Rachel said cheerfully. "The point is, you're a legend." Tyler literally said, "Sarah Mitchell is a legend," when he was telling me this story. We toasted to legends and second chances, to justice and healing, to the unexpected ways life reorganizes itself after destruction. My book manuscript was due to the publisher in 2 months, and I'd been struggling with the final chapter. How do you end a story about betrayal and revenge? With vindication? With forgiveness? With a simple declaration of moving forward? That night, I finally wrote the ending. People often ask if I regret how I handled Marcus's betrayal, if I wish I'd taken a different path, been more forgiving, less calculated. The answer is no. I don't regret exposing his fraud or documenting his manipulation, or ensuring he faced consequences. I regret the years I wasted making myself smaller to accommodate his ego. I regret ignoring my instincts when they told me something was wrong. I regret accepting crumbs of affection and calling them love, but I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret demanding accountability, and I don't regret using my experience to help others recognize and escape similar situations. Marcus taught me what I didn't want in a relationship. The process of dismantling his lies taught me what I deserved: honesty, respect, partnership built on genuine care rather than manipulation and control. If you're reading this and recognizing patterns from your own life, know that leaving isn't weakness. Demanding better isn't vindictive, and protecting yourself isn't selfish. You deserve relationships that build you up rather than tear you down. You deserve partners who celebrate your strength rather than exploit your vulnerabilities. You deserve love that doesn't require you to doubt your own reality. Marcus got 3 years in prison. I got the rest of my life back. I know who got the better deal. I sent the manuscript to my editor the next morning, feeling a sense of completion. This chapter of my life was truly closed now, not because Marcus was in prison or because justice had been served, but because I'd done the work to understand myself and emerge stronger. A year after that anniversary dinner at Marcello's, I received an unexpected invitation to speak at a conference on financial fraud and domestic abuse. The keynote speaker was Robert Chen, Marcus's uncle, the venture capitalist who'd first reached out to apologize for his nephew's behavior. After my panel presentation, Robert approached me. "That was powerful testimony," he said. "Have you considered expanding your consulting work? There are multiple organizations that could benefit from your expertise." "I'm already working with the tech startup you introduced me to," I reminded him. "I know. I'm talking about something bigger, a foundation dedicated to helping survivors of financial abuse. Documentation resources, legal referrals, therapy connections, job placement assistance. You could run it. I'd provide initial funding." The offer was stunning. Why would you invest in something like that? Because Marcus isn't the only person doing what he did. Financial manipulation is endemic in abusive relationships, and most survivors don't have the resources or knowledge you had to fight back. Robert's expression was serious. "You turned your pain into purpose. Imagine what you could do with real infrastructure and funding behind you." I thought about Amy struggling to navigate child support without guidance, about Jennifer losing her job and scrambling to rebuild, about the thousands of people in my online forum desperate for practical help, about every person who'd reached out after reading my blog post, looking for hope and resources. "Let me think about it," I said. That evening, I called Amy. "How would you feel about being part of something bigger? A foundation to help people in situations like the ones we went through?" "I'd love that," she said immediately. "Using what happened to us to help others? That feels right." I called Jennifer next, who cried when I explained the opportunity. "You're giving me a chance to make amends," she said, "to turn my mistakes into something meaningful. Thank you." Within 3 months, the foundation was established, the Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Financial Justice, though I'd argued for a less personal name, specialized in helping survivors of financial abuse and fraud. Amy handled community outreach. Jennifer coordinated legal referrals. I managed overall strategy and served as the public face. Our first client was a woman whose husband had secretly taken out credit cards in her name, destroying her credit score. Our second was a man whose business partner had embezzled funds and blamed him. Our third was a single mother whose ex-partner was hiding income to avoid child support. Each case reminded me why this work mattered. Marcus had been one person, but the patterns of manipulation and financial abuse he'd employed were universal. By helping others recognize and document those patterns, we were disrupting a system that relied on victims being too confused, scared, or overwhelmed to fight back. 2 years after Marcus went to prison, I received a letter from him. The prison forwarded it to my lawyer, who called to ask if I wanted to see it. "What does it say?" I asked. "He's asking to meet with you. Claims he's been doing therapy in prison, that he understands now what he did wrong, that he wants to apologize in person." Alan's tone suggested skepticism. "Up to you if you want to respond." I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. "No. Tell him I'm not interested." "You sure? Some people find closure in hearing apologies. Marcus doesn't apologize. He manipulates. Even in prison, even in therapy, he's still trying to control the narrative. He wants the chance to charm me, to make excuses, to position himself as someone who's learned and grown. I was certain of this. I don't need his apology. I don't need his recognition of wrongdoing. I needed justice, and I got it. That's enough." Alan sent a formal response declining the meeting request. Marcus never reached out again. 3 years after our anniversary dinner, I stood in the same restaurant, Marcello's, hosting a celebration dinner for the foundation's first anniversary. The same waiter who'd brought me complimentary bread when I sat alone all those years ago now served our table of 12 with a knowing smile. "You look happier," he said quietly as he poured my wine. "I am happier," I confirmed. Rachel raised her glass for a toast. "To Sarah, who turned the worst anniversary dinner in history into a movement that's helped hundreds of people escape financial abuse." Around the table were Amy and Jennifer, Robert Chen and his wife, several foundation board members, and 2 survivors we'd helped who'd become volunteers. We clicked glasses and laughed, the sound filling the space where years ago I'd sat in humiliated silence. As dessert arrived, my phone buzzed with a notification. Marcus had been released on parole after serving his full 3-year sentence. The news should have bothered me, but I felt only distant acknowledgement. He was out there somewhere, probably already lying to someone new, but he was no longer my problem. I had built a life beyond him, a meaningful career helping others, genuine friendships based on mutual respect, a sense of self-worth that didn't depend on anyone else's validation, freedom from the exhausting work of managing someone else's moods and excuses. Marcus had taken me for granted, had humiliated me publicly, had shown up late to our anniversary with his drunk friends and told me to stop being dramatic. He thought I was weak, that I'd accept his disrespect because I always had before. He'd been wrong. wrong, and that miscalculation had cost him everything while giving me the motivation to rebuild myself into someone stronger, clearer, and more purposeful than I'd ever been. I looked around the table at people who valued and respected me, then raised my glass one final time to accountability, to justice, and to never settling for less than we deserve. To never settling, everyone echoed. The waiter brought the check, and I paid it with my foundation credit card. The meal a business expense for celebrating our work helping survivors rebuild their lives. As we stood to leave, I glanced at the table where I'd sat alone 3 years ago, waiting for someone who didn't value me. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who'd fought back, who'd demanded accountability, who'd transformed personal pain into collective purpose. Marcus had given me a terrible gift that anniversary night, the gift of seeing him clearly for the first time. What I did with that clarity was entirely my choice, and I'd chosen well. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who thought you'd always accept their disrespect? What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to protect someone from the consequences of their own actions. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships that respect your worth. Thanks for watching, and take care. And take